Greetings, everybody. I'm Anand Ganu, founder president of Garze Marathi Global, a non-profit organization registered in California and in India. Garze Marathi Global is a professional platform that has been created to create a bond between global community through the excellence driven by education, entrepreneurship, and knowledge sharing, culminating in a social and collective intelligence. It is our great pleasure and honor that today we have with us VASU JAKKAL, Corporate Vice President, Microsoft Security, Compliance, and Identity. Vasu, I welcome you.
Thank you so much,
So
Anand.
recently we concluded a demo day. We conducted 16 weeks acceleration program for early stage startup, and eight startups from India and one from Singapore presented their pitches to more than 8 or 9 investors. Very successful program. Actually, we wanted to schedule your lecture on 14th week of that 16-week program, but somehow your diary was so full, calendar was so full that we couldn't, means you couldn't accommodate us. But that's okay. All those eight startups are going to be present today. So thanks a lot. They are ready to, they are waiting to learn from you. Today's moderator for the today's program is Garze Marathi's strong supporter, guide advisor, Vijay Talele, who is CEO of College of Engineering, Pune's Bhau Institute of Innovation, Entrepreneurship and Leadership. To give detailed introduction of today's esteemed guest and to conduct proceedings of today's program, I invite Vijay Talele to take over. Once again, Vasu, hearty welcome and thanks a lot. Over to you, Vijay.
Thank you, Anandji. Thank you. So, welcome, Vasu. I think it's a great pride for us to have you on this webinar and a session to discuss more about cybersecurity. And before I get into the actual topic, let me give a brief about Vasu. Vasu has over 20 years of experience in technology across marketing, brand communication, products, demand operations, strategy, general management, mostly and in cloud, cybersecurity, IoT, and mobility. During her career, she has worked with large organizations in the US like Intel, LSI, Brocade, FireEye, and recently with Microsoft now. At Microsoft, she is a corporate vice president managing the Microsoft security, compliance, identity, and responsible for almost $10 billion plus of security, compliance, and identity business and marketing also at Microsoft. Vasu is a great combination of having strategic and operational focus. She also has a great experience of computer security and marketing. Just to get some achievements of Vasu, Vasu has been recognized by Forbes as a CMO Next in one of the 50 marketing chiefs, redefining the role and shaping the future of marketing. Recognized as top 25 women in cybersecurity by the Software Review. Recognized as 10 best CMOs of 2019 by Silicon Review. 2018 Woman of the Year finalist by Women in IT Awards, Marketers That Matter Innovation Council 2018-2019, and Silicon Valley Executive Network Board of Directors. Vasu comes from our own college, COEP, College of Engineering Pune in 1997 Electrical, and after that she has done a Master's in MSc Electrical from University of Minnesota and Executive MBA from Stanford. Welcome Vasu to this fireside chat, and we will initiate our discussion.
Well, Vijay and Anand and everyone, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's such an honor to be here with you all. Vijay, that was a little embarrassing. I was like, oh my God, that's a long introduction. So next time we need to cut it really short. I think there are a lot of, I'm very grateful because I've had incredible people in my life who have lifted me up and given me opportunities. And that's really what is at the heart of success and how I define success. And of course, none of it would have happened without COEP, who gave me my foundation. So I'll say, Are va va va, to get started, right? That was our slogan. And I'm a very proud Firodia participant as well. Gosh, it seems like it was ages back, but
Yeah.
it's so nice to be here. And I hope I can add my very little bit of value. I also want to thank Leslie Green, who's on the call, but her video is not working. She is my partner in crime, and she was instrumental to helping me put together today's talk. So thank you, Leslie, and back to you, Vijay.
Thank you, Vasu,
But
and
Vasu,
great.
you certainly, as a CUAPN, you certainly deserve this applause
Yeah,
Oh,
and this appreciation from all of us. Yes.
thank you. Thank you very much. That's very kind.
That was the director of COEP, Dr. Ahuja.
Thank you, sir. So, Vasu, let's start our discussion. I think since you have worked in the 20 years in the marketing and cloud and security, at a micro level, what do you think the major cybersecurity aspects, all like whether you talk about mid-size organization or large-size organization, need to focus upon at a micro level? Then we will start going down little bit and
Yeah.
discuss more further. Yeah.
Yeah. So, to start with, I would say cybersecurity is the defining challenge of today and tomorrow, of our century.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is if you look at what we call Maslow's hierarchy, that is how humans live. And at the very bottom of that, right next to food, water, shelter, there's safety. And safety comes in many ways. But if you look at how we live today, it's very much digital. Like today, I am here in California, you're all in India, Singapore, Hong Kong, and we're trusting this technology to complete our conversation. When we lose trust in the very technology that we need to live, that we need and to work and to play, we are entering a very dystopian and dysfunctional society. And we're on the verge of that. If you look at the increase in fake news and disinformation and foreign attack, like nation state attacks and ransomware, it's very shaky right now. We are at a precipice. So that's why cybersecurity is super critical and a defining moment. So that's how I look at it. If I then go down and I say, well, what's happening right now and why is there such an escalation? Because there was a shift that happened last year. So I will take you last year to right about now, October 2020, when the industry faced one of the most sophisticated and probably the most complex attack that we've seen. It was by a Russian threat group called Nobelium. That's what Microsoft calls them. And it was related to SolarWinds. If you follow the news here, SolarWinds is a software supply chain company. And it impacted many, many companies. And Microsoft and actually my previous employer company, Fireside, we were on the front lines trying to find this. It really shook us. And we said, this is a moment of reckoning for all of us in technology. When security companies start getting attacked, we have a real problem. And that's what happened with SolarWinds. Then we had the exchange on-prem with a group called Hafnium, which was a Chinese nation-state sponsored attack. Then we had something called the Colonial Pipeline hack, which was ransomware. We had meat packaging industries, infrastructure, every single industry. So there's a lot of attacks happening right now. I'll share some stats. There's 579 attacks per second that is happening in the world. That's 50 billion attacks in a year. And the reason largely we don't see that is because there's a lot of defenders, including Microsoft, who are protecting and preventing these attacks.
Right.
But it's a very escalated landscape right now, Vijay. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is when the pandemic happened, all of us overnight became remote businesses. That means the network, as we knew it, right? Sometimes, the way we traditionally operated, you come to COEP as an example. There's a network architecture there. Once you enter the network, you're protected, you have access. You go to your home. Well, that's no longer true because your home and your work and everything is much. Your kids are learning from home. You're working from home. It's all over the place. And the number of attacks the number of surfaces has increased. You're using more devices, you're connected to more things. In general, the whole world is more connected because everyone's moved to a digital business. 30 billion IoT devices are going online. That means there are more digital surfaces. Each of those is a surface. Anything that is digital and that's connected can and will be hacked. Okay. So now you just have many, many, many more digital attack surfaces. So that's trend number one. Trend number two is, I talked about it, the attack sophistication has increased. And not only the attack sophistication, the diversity in attacks has increased. So, 10, 20 years back, largely cybersecurity was about espionage, right? So spying, when governments spied on governments or enterprise. That was called nation state. But today that's not the case. Ransomware is on the rise. So along with nation state, cybersecurity is a very profitable industry because people are making a lot of money. And things like cyber crime as a service, which means I hold you hostage, and you pay me, but I don't have to do the whole attack thing. I've broken the attack cycle. I sell it on the dark web, and their specialization is a kind of a very creative business model that their people have come up with. So that's on the rise. So that's sophistication and frequency. The third one is, gosh, there's just a massive talent shortage in our industry. There are 3.5 million jobs. So if you're thinking of choosing security, choose security. A lot of money to be made, lots of opportunities. But there's a lot of talent shortage right now. Cybersecurity is still very new, and what was relevant 5 years back is not relevant today. So we need to do more as an ecosystem of providing tools and lessons and certifications and degrees, but even more than that, just teaching people about cybersecurity. There's incredible cost pressures as well on people. There is economic pressures. Cybersecurity is the number one spend as the most defensible spend, but people are going through their own economic challenges, and a lot of companies have stepped back and said, you know what, I've spent millions of dollars in cybersecurity, but I don't even know whether it's working for me. Like, I'm still getting hacked. So what is the ROI? What's the return on investment? So there's the economic pressures, and this, what is the ROI? And then the last one is related to operational resiliency, where you see most companies, most organizations and leaders do not want to bet their house on any one thing. So if they want clouds, they want Microsoft Azure and Google and Amazon. That creates more complexity that now these companies have to deal with and create silos. So that is also putting pressure. So these 5 things together have created this inflection in security overall, where people are under tremendous pressure. And that's why, we're moving to things like a zero trust architecture, which I think is fundamental to what we need to do. So I'll pause there because that was a lot. But at a macro level, those are the trends that we're seeing.
Okay, great. So, Vasu, I think that was a great overview. And I think our participants have realized that 579 attacks a second is really a huge number, and also the complexity of the attacks that has increased over last 1 or 2 years. And you really nicely listed all those 5 points of digital connected surfaces, the sophistication, the diversity, the shortage, the ROI. I think it's a complex problem for any organization to solve. So while we are on this overall perspective of how complex these cybersecurity issues are and how organizations are dealing with it, there is naturally a lot of time. It has changed over a period of years. It used to be a more reactive strategy for the top management, or even not even top management. It was at a CIO level, and now it has moved to the top management, and it has become a proactive strategy also is more required with the increase in the complexity and attacks. So you talked about, you just touched upon zero trust, this thing, a cybersecurity strategy. Can you also touch upon what are the new technologies, new features that are coming up in the market for protecting the data security and organization assets?
Absolutely. So to start with, let's talk a little bit about zero trust, because I think that is the underpinnings of what's happening here. And then I'll walk you through a couple of other things. So the first thing is, we are big proponents of a zero trust mindset and an architecture. And why is that? And I get a lot of times when I meet people and customers and partners, they'll say zero trust seems like antitrust. So like security is all about trust. Why would I do zero trust? And the truth is, to have trust, you need zero trust. What zero trust simply means is you cannot trust. So you should have zero trust in the activities that are happening and incoming to an organization. You have to assume breach. That means you have to assume that attacks are inevitable, and you have to verify everything explicitly. So there are 3 pillars of zero trust, and each of them is related to a technology. So I'm going to walk you through that. The first one is verifying explicitly. And that starts with a great identity and a great cloud identity. I cannot emphasize how important identity is, because those 579 attacks, majority of those are identity related: password spraying, phishing, brute force attacks, right? So we can talk more, but identity has become the battleground of security. So the first one of verifying explicitly means if you, Vijay, are accessing, let's say you work at Microsoft and you're accessing the network, every time you access, we are verifying you explicitly. We don't like just assume, hey, you've just entered it once and that's Vijay. We can't, because you're not physically here, you're virtually. And there are two things at the heart of this verifying explicitly. It's called conditional access. That means I'm giving you access conditionally and contextually based on how is he accessing it, where is he located, what are his other credentials. So there's a very smart, intelligent algorithm. And there's continuous access. So even though I give you access one, every time you try to do a new activity, I am revalidating or re-verifying whether that is you. So that's verifying explicitly, and there's more advanced identity features related to that. The second pillar of zero trust is called privileged access. Privileged access, or it's called actually least privileged access. That means if there was, once upon a time, way back, even now it happens, right? You're an IT admin, you get blanket access, or you're an employee, you're an engineer, and people are like, here you go, you have full code access. The challenge is there are many unintentional data losses that can happen. Someone can do something and now the entire organization is compromised. So least privileged access means giving you access to only the things you need for doing your job. I don't want access to everything because I don't know what mistakes I'll make. So just limiting human error, right? And so that's least privilege, is don't give global access, see contextual and give that access. And then the last, and for that least privilege, again, you need identity, but you need device management. You need policies. You need healthy device management. You need to be patching your devices. If you're not patching your devices, you're putting that at a lot of risk. And then the last one is where I started, is assume breach. And assume breach is all about, you have to assume that these attacks are in your system and these attackers, and they're very smart. Attackers are very smart. This is an asymmetric game in security. It's not easy. I can talk more about what that means. So you have to assume that, and you have to have security and compliance tools and privacy tools which protect you against that. So things like extended detection and response, which is a very new concept and a new technology, and I can dig deeper into that. It's very important. That means you are protecting your devices and your data and your infrastructure and your clouds and your identities, plus, IoT, all of it. You have something called a SIEM, SIEM, which is aggregating security information and events. View it as a big brain, which just collects all this data and it's operating on that and is giving you insights that you can protect. And then you have compliance, because as you think of security, you also have to think of inside out protection and compliance, like, do I have insider risk issues? And they're intentional. Insider risk is on an alarming rise. Is data going to be lost? So if I have a confidential document, but I need to send it to Anand, and I don't realize, that I'm managing, I forget and I send it, that's data loss, right? I can send sensitive information accidentally. Do I have information governance? Do I know where my data is, what the labels are? Let's take European data regulations right now. When countries cross, you need to be abiding by those. How am I complying with that? And what is the risk? Do I have governance on all of this? So those are some of the things as part of that assume breach pillar, the third one, you just need to have. So that's zero trust. And then I'll answer your second question, which was, so what are some of the new technologies? Because it's related. First of all, for zero trust, you need to have a comprehensive security posture. Because if you don't, it's like securing a door and leaving a window open. Not very helpful, because the attacker is going to jump straight into your house if you do that. So you have to think of cybersecurity, of identity, of management, of compliance, of privacy as a whole. All of this is security. They're not separate things, and we shouldn't treat them as separate. XDR plus SIEM that I talked about, super critical for security. Cloud security. How are you managing cloud resources? How are you giving access to cloud resources? So things like cloud access security brokers or multi-cloud security, super important. IoT security is very important. Operational technology, used to be like on its own little island, but that is getting digitized, and a lot of these attacks are now happening there. I think one of my friends gave me a stat: the food industry, food and beverage industry, 1,300% increase in cyber attacks or something like that. I mean, wow. So OT is on the rise, and you have to think about OT connected to IT. How do you get visibility? The second thing on the identity thing, advanced identity, I cannot emphasize how important it is. And if you all have organizations, or even for your personal, and if you haven't done multi-factor authentication, which is 2-factor or more, I urge you to do that. I beg you to do that, because there's, even in Microsoft customers, only 20% of our customers have it. Now we've increased by hundreds of percent year over year, but we're not where we need to be. So we need to have multi-factor authentication as the first line of defense, and advanced identity, because that's where attacks are happening. As I said, credential theft is on the rise. So you have to do all you can protect. Management. How many times, we get patches and we're like, oh, I'll do it later. Well, don't put it off, because you know what? There's a reason these patches are coming. You need to take time. You need to make sure that you are securing your devices, like pay attention. And then the fourth one is compliance. And I talked about that. Privacy also goes hand in hand with compliance. The third one, which is on the rise, is, along with zero trust, comprehensive, which is needed, artificial intelligence and the role that it plays in security is super important, because humans cannot scale. You and I may have the best intention, but there's only so many hours in the day. We still live in time and space boundaries. Maybe one day we won't. And so we are just like operating within those constraints. So AI is going to help us, because it's going to give us unprecedented visibility. So let me throw a stat. At Microsoft, we just released this number 2 weeks back in our digital defense report. So if you want to take a look at all the trends, we can send you that report. Please take a look. We see 24 trillion signals every day. Every day. 24 trillion. That's a lot of signals. First of all, I'm like, thank God we see 24 trillion signals, because security is about finding the needle in the haystack. And then, there's no way a human can look at 24 trillion signals and make any sense out of it. So then we apply advanced machine learning, and we apply automation on top of that, so you can get insights and catch what others miss. So that also is a growing trend, is how is machine learning, mixed reality, AI, all of that impacting the world of cybersecurity. And then the last one is, don't underestimate the power of great design thinking and simplification. Cybersecurity is extremely complex, and it's very messy. And one of my personal North Stars for Microsoft is an easy button. I say it all the time. We need an easy button. We need an easy button. And in fact, I remember my first strategy session with Satya, and I was like, we need this easy button, or not even like a couple of months when I joined my job. And he's like, yeah, because it's so hard to like know what's going on. So I think things towards simplification and making things easy for customers is going to really, really matter. So that design thinking on how things are coming together. What is the pane of glass? How do you beautifully present information? How do you help people understand their posture management? Big, important, blazing red. I want to know how secure am I? How do I know that? That is going to be a growing, to me, a growing trend. So those are the four things: zero trust, comprehensive security, AI, machine learning. The last one is, just design and experience and simplicity.
Thank you. So great. I think, Vasu, great to have this exposure and kind of perspective. What you have put in here is, one is, how does zero trust and what does zero trust involve really? Like identity, the privilege access or least privilege access, device management, assured breach, and this thing. And then you talked about what are the other areas, like comprehensive security posture, the AI, role of AI, and design thinking, and other things. Now, on the role of AI, while zero trust security is also there, there have been applications or the products which are helpful in the threat management, advanced IAM solutions, and with the work from anywhere, cloud computing also is naturally. You talked about cloud security and IoT security, and that is also coming up. How does AI play a role in any of these things, like user behavioral and you talked about 24 trillion signals per day, and analyzing those signals and then finding out whether you are capturing those breaches, and if there is going to be a large breach. And what you talked about, like last year we had 3 major attacks, and even security companies really found it interesting or kind of difficult to find those out. So how do you think AI will play a role in that? And after that, I would like to move on to, like, okay, let's look down little bit lower level, that what could organizations focus upon immediately, and then maybe a startups and some of these things, because naturally we also need to see there are large organizations and there are small and mid-sized organizations. Everybody won't be able to afford to have all the devices, all the threat management solutions in their portfolio. So what are the minimum things that they need to have, and how can they still manage their cyber security well?
Yeah. So let's tackle the AI question first, and then I'll get into some of the, focus areas. So from an AI perspective, it touches every single technology in security. It's not just for a few, right? So let's start with where you asked me, like, what are some of the places like in this identity or device management? Let's start with something which is most important right now, which is device detection, which used to be called EDR, so endpoint detection and response, but it's also endpoint protection, called EPP right now. And as I said, it's becoming XDR, which is extended detection and response. AI plays a big role in that, because ultimately security is about leading with threat intelligence. You need to know what the information out there is, and you need to act. What does that mean, right? You need to have end-to-end visibility. So your devices, endpoint device protection is simply like, I have security on my laptop, on my phone, on my IoT device, on my server, containers, and I am looking at what information is coming in those devices, and I'm applying AI to it to parse out the signal to noise ratio, to parse out what is important, what is not, to parse out what is good data, what is malware. And you have to have AI for that. So at that very level, and EDR is right now the most important technology when it comes to security that companies want, because they need to protect their devices to start with. So there's a lot of AI applicability there. And if you're wondering okay, what are organizations doing? That's a conversation that happens, and that is getting extended because most organizations are on a cloud security journey. Vijay, as you said, I know we all know this, but the cloud is inherently more secure, even though it may not seem intuitive. The reason is, if you have an on-premise server, how do you protect it globally?
Right.
You are relying on that particular organization. Sometimes these servers are in some back room and no one knows about them. So it's very hard to protect them. So cloud, you can instantly patch, you can instantly protect everyone. So cloud security is also on the rise. And AI is used for that. The one thing I would say, which is a very important thing, and I didn't touch on it, is most organizations need multi-cloud and multi-platform posture. So there was a time when, solutions, even Microsoft, were like, hey, we do endpoint protection just for Microsoft devices, right? Microsoft 365 or Azure. Well, remember I told you, everybody has operational resiliency. So the security person is saying, I don't want different solutions. Gosh, it's getting very complex. So big area of focus is multi-cloud, multi-platform, where I want one solution which protects AWS, GCP, Microsoft workloads, Android, iOS, Linux, Windows, all of those. So that's also on the rise. And I think AI plays a big role in that as well. So now let me shift. So, and AI is going to have a very big role in our future. And here's why. Ultimately, what organizations are seeking in VASU's perspective is what's happening in the world, right? What are the threats happening? How do I collect this information? And can I just look at this threat and say, which threats am I exposed to? So let's say SolarWinds attack is happening and I am Gajra Institute in India. Can I say, hey, am I exposed to this? Today, you can't really do that very effectively. In some ways, like actually, Microsoft has a product we call Defender, and Defender allows you to do that. It has something called TTPs, which are attack tactics, techniques, and practices, which are already embedded. And so every time there's an attack, we put it and we give you a score. We say this is your secure score, but it still needs to be scaled out. So what if I was Anand, I would be like, am I protected against this SolarWinds attack? And if I'm not protected, what are the 3 things I need to do? You need AI for that. That's where the world is headed. So all these technologies are converging. So now let's go to the second level order, which you ask is, if I was a startup, what would I focus? XDR is an evolving field. And think of XDR as there were traditional ways of protecting. But there are new things coming up, right? There are new technologies, there are new devices. Network architecture itself is evolving pretty rapidly. So I think that's a great place to start with. What are innovations there that I need to do? The second place is on posture management. I talked about it a lot. That is, how do I do? And you don't need to be a really big company. I've seen some fabulous innovations from startups. We do this startup showcase. So Microsoft has an investment arm called M12, which invests in startups, and we do that a lot. And Michelle Gonzalez, she's our new M12 leader. She's awesome. And so they had a security showcase, and we were looking at security startups, and gosh, like mind-blowing innovation. But what are, like, to me, like, posture, how do you do that? And how can you do that is a growing area. IoT, I think, is a massively interesting field, especially operational technology, is what's happening, how do you get metadata, and how do you collect this, and then how do you operate on that metadata with security? The last one, which is a little bit at the periphery but super important, is how do you catch disinformation? How do you really catch disinformation, right? Today, you can't even tell a picture is real or not, a video, you have deepfakes. And there's a very interesting startup that I just met called TruePic. You should check it out. They're super cool. Like, they have this way in which they verify picture validity. So there's a lot of like this information on, there's a lot of like innovation there. So I would say those are some of the areas that I think. And then the 2 hot ones, identity is always going to be super hot. Like cloud identity is evolving. How do you manage customer identity? Privilege access management is called PAM. Privilege identity management is called PIM. Like there's like all kinds of things happening that are interesting things. You don't need to start very big. You can pick one and really get good at that. And then compliance is very new, and it is kind of legacy. So I think there's a lot of disruption waiting to happen on compliance and privacy management solutions as well.
Great. Thank you, Vasu. I think that gives a great overview about what some startups who are trying to focus on cybersecurity areas can look into. I think somewhere I happened to read about passwordless authentication.
Yeah.
And while I was going through your profile and I going through your post, I happened to read about password. I said, "What is that?" Maybe I should ask Vasu about it when I'm talking to her. And
I know.
there is.
We were so blown away. Like the media loved it. So we're like, hey, who knew? Like we're going to show up on the Today Show and CNN and all that because of passwordless, but we did.
And phishing as a service, or like there is a lot of emphasis on quantum technology like encryption, cryptology, and we did talk about AI. So how does this all pieces put together? And naturally, you did mention about startups, what they can focus upon. But do you think this also the audience would love to understand what is a passwordless authentication and some of these areas about cryptography and those things, whether startups can go deep into those areas?
Yeah, so let's start with passwordless. So basically what we announced is, again, remember, cloud identity is very critical and identity is the battleground. So the 579 attacks that I use, how do you protect against that? And passwordless is an important one, multi-factor authentication coupled with it. So for all Microsoft, we announced this in March for all commercial accounts, and we just expanded that to all consumer accounts. So if you have a Microsoft account, you can go and you can be entirely passwordless. I'm passwordless, so I can tell you that, and it's fantastic. Like, it's a great experience. and you're protected. How many of us love passwords? I have a very complex relationship with my password. You don't remember passwords. And if you remember password, that means your password is not secure because you're using the same password. And these attackers are smart. So they're using your own passwords to log into your own systems. And so with that, we said, let's just get rid of passwords. It's just not a great thing. So if you own a Microsoft account and, whether it's SharePoint or OneDrive or any of these, you can go into your settings. It's very simple. It's a couple of clicks and you can say choose passwordless. And once you choose, it'll walk you through a couple of steps. You probably will need a Microsoft Authenticator or another authenticator, and it sets you up. So now your experience is awesome, Vijay, because you go to your device and you don't need your password. It will detect you, and then it also sends you another notification, like click on this to verify, and so you're dually safe. So that's the password list. You asked me related to that, like what are some of the like phishing as a service and all. So phishing is it's interesting because it preys on human nature. You get a link. Even I get links like, hey, there's a deposit in your bank account. And you're like, what deposit? Like who put money? And, then you click on it, it'll download and it's a problem. We had recently Nebelian, which is the same Russian threat actor group behind SolarWinds. A few months back, we caught them in a major phishing campaign where they were sending emails from our government, right, from Biden's office, but with Trump related. So people are like, what is this? And human curiosity, you click and they got you, right? So phishing is on the rise. And so I think to protect against phishing, there are solutions now, like phishing kits and how do you protect against that? So that's a very interesting area of innovation. The second one related to that, we didn't talk about ransomware, we kind of did and we didn't. But if you are a startup and if you can figure out great, like out-of-box ransomware solutions that people can deploy, because look, cybersecurity innovation can happen at multiple levels. It can happen at AI level, very like platform. How do you scale? It can happen at like product level, endpoint protection, identity. It can happen at solution level, which is what ransomware, phishing, all of this are. And it's a great point you brought up because that is also a place where people want those solutions. Hey, I'm a healthcare organization. I want a healthcare security solution, which can use multiple other products, but I want that out of the box. Wow, brilliant place to innovate, right? Because someone I just want a healthcare. And also exciting. I mean, how fun is that? Like to come out like out of box solutions. Same thing for financial, same thing we talked about IoT. So I do believe that how do you protect against things like ransomware, phishing? How do you protect against even cryptocurrencies are a challenge, right? Because they're anonymous and they're using. So how do you validate a cryptocurrency when it comes to things like what do you do there? Like that's to me, even I don't know. So that might be interesting. And then encryption and cryptography and all of that, right? What we call de-identification or my pronunciation, where you pseudonymize, I think, Leslie, things. That's another great place. Like, how do you do that? So there's a lot of innovation. I, again, met a startup, so brilliant. They call themselves the Twilio of privacy. I think that's what they call them. And they're de-identifying, like you just insert a code block and voila, your privacy is de-identified. So there's a lot of things people can do. What I encourage you is to step back, rethink what this thing needs, like security needs, and can you come up with modern ways of simple ways of protecting these things? Pick one and say, how do you make endpoint security better, more user-friendly? The privacy example, I think it's called privateai.com. But super cool. I was really impressed with them. They just it's like a code block and you put in, you've de-identified your that whole code. So there might be some other things like that from a cryptography perspective that, because a lot of these are very legacy, Vijay, they're very old school. The other thing, which I probably should have talked first, supply chain. Oh my God, it's such it's just a mess. And by supply chain, I mean, you receive services, right, from different companies. You're relying on, let's say, Bhau Institute. Bhau Institute gets internet connection from someone. You get servers from someone. You get software. and then you provide services to other companies. And so in a cloud service provider environment, it's very challenging because you're getting services, you're providing services, you're reselling services. That entire thing end-to-end is supply chain. Supply chain security needs a revisit.
Mhm.
And it needs to we need to figure this out. Like, how do you even do supply chain? What are the algorithms? How do you kind of, what is the mapping? Can someone take this whole supply chain, and that would be my nirvana, just give a snapshot of it. Like, here's your entire supply chain. I can just plug the software in and it will detect, it will use all my endpoint devices. It will help me get that data and map it out beautifully. And then I can say, weak link, weak point, unsecure, here's what it is. That would be amazing. So I should have said that, because I personally would love to see a lot of innovation on the supply chain side of things.
Great. One thing during our talk, I realized that you gave examples of the industries like supply chain, food, healthcare. If I thought about cybersecurity, normally one thinks about technology companies which will have more attacks and more get impacted. But nowadays, is there any industry which is not prone to cyber attacks, like even healthcare and everything, which wasn't that prone, but now I think they are also getting attacks?
Every industry, no matter which sector you are, no matter what size you are, no matter where you are, every consumer, no matter who you are, is impacted by cybersecurity. And I think if I were to leave you with one message, I want you to leave you with that, because sometimes we feel this is not my problem. The fire is happening in Australia, so I live in California. I don't need to worry about it.
Right.
Sorry, let me remove that illusion. You all likely will be under attack. You should be very careful and very thoughtful, because there's no place in our world, unless you're living in the middle of a jungle somewhere, that you're not using technology. And even there, you're using technology. You're using a phone. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it's a matter of, do you have something of value that they want, right? So if you're high value, of course, you're more prone. But I'll tell you, Vijay, attackers are finding, oh, I'm connected to Vijay, Vijay's connected to Anand. If I want access to Anand, hack VASU through Vijay, I can go there. It's a very challenging place. And so, we have to do better. This is why I'm so passionate about it, is I'm so tired. It's I see really dystopian stuff sometimes. And it's just come on, we have to do better than this. We have to reshape cybersecurity. We have to think of it as a platform coming together where all of this is, the whole ecosystem needs to participate. And honestly, any software company needs to participate. You cannot generate code today if you're not thinking security. That's terrible. So you've got to think security first and then design the software. So sorry, I went on a rant, but it's so critical that we understand the importance of cybersecurity. As I told you, it's the most defining problem of our century right now.
Thank you, Vasu. And just last question I will have is, naturally, all the organizations, whether you talk about small, mid-size, large organizations, right from the CEO level, are focusing on cybersecurity as a strategy, and they are more changing towards proactive cybersecurity strategy also. But for a layman, naturally, they also need to start thinking about cybersecurity. Just not worry about that your organization will take care of the cybersecurity, so you don't need to worry about it. But since you gave an example and you mentioned about phones, which we often use, and they are very prone to phishing. So how does a layman protect themselves from the basic concepts that they should focus upon?
Yeah. So first thing, get two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
If you can go passwordless, go passwordless. Protect yourself, right? I would say everybody should check. If you go on LinkedIn or if you go on Facebook or your device, is it just login, or also do you have hey, send me a text or send me an email? Doesn't matter what, just get something. There's a lot of courses now available, including Microsoft. Microsoft has 8 certifications these are all free, so anyone can take them on cybersecurity. There's a big content repository. We are also working with many industry organizations across the board. In fact, happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. This is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, October. So there's a lot of initiatives private sector, public sector are doing to create awareness, including Microsoft. And so I would say there's a lot of information there. Please read that information. Please adopt and act on it. Educate your families. I spend a lot of time educating my family, like not that they're very interested, but still like we are, at risk. So I think it starts there. Your children, where are they at? What are they accessing? Are they protected against these things? While simple, I would start there. And for organizations, even if you're a small organization, a startup or a small and medium business, there are resources out there. There are solutions out there, including Microsoft. So take a look at what you can do. There's a lot of free stuff available as well. So, there is security for everyone, and we are doing our part towards this. So if you can't find information, send us a note and we'll get it to you.
Thank you, Vasu. Thank you. So there are a couple of questions, I think, Vasu, we have got from the audience. One of the question is from Dr. Ajit Javkar, who teaches AI at Oxford University in UK. And he also works closely with Microsoft team, Azure Sphere. Okay. So his question is on the IoT security. Do you see it's on the radar for people, IoT security? And are the people taking IoT security seriously?
Yes, so absolutely it is on the radar. There is innovation happening. There always could be more innovation. And in terms of IoT, because IoT is very broad, it could include things like your printers and, your own organization, but it could also include like refrigerators and microwaves and ovens, and it could include like factory devices and lighting and all. So there's innovation in operational technology in particular. I think we have seen a lot of investment in that, including Microsoft, right? We acquired a company called CyberX in 2020 early. We call it our Defender for IoT solution right now. So there's innovation. Could there be more? Absolutely. Because, compared to IT, OT is still very nascent and IoT is still very nascent. So would love to see that bar just keep going high.
Okay. I think, Ajitji, your second question is, I think, answered by Vasu, which is key trends you see in AI and cybersecurity.
Correct, exactly. So thank you, Vasu, for your response to that. And like I said, we work with the Azure Sphere team and people like that, so I know them very well. I just wanted to add a bit of context to my question. So like when we talk about the 7 properties of highly secure devices and things like that, which Microsoft sort of postulates, I think that gets people in the framework with that. Then that's the thing I wanted to kind of discuss, is that do people see IoT as a sort of an afterthought? But I think you've answered that, and I think that's thank you again for that.
Yeah, and we need to change that as well. There's a lot of work that we collectively have to do. There's a lot of organizations which are not secure. It'll be surprising, right? Because we've kind of built our IT systems a while back, and it's a lot of work. So I think, Ajit, first of all, thank you so much for the question. And thank you for the partnership with Microsoft. I'm so happy to hear that that's going well. We are grateful for your partnership. But we have to keep innovating on IoT. We are still it's very nascent.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if we look at the Azure Microsoft Learn team, we contribute a lot to, you'll see the Oxford University of Oxford quite a bit of a contribution. Thank you again for that. Cool. Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you, Dr. Raj. Thank you. So Tushar Deshpande has a comment and as well as few questions. He says, thanks for the illuminating talk, Vasu. A couple of questions. Could you please share your thoughts about self-sovereign identity and application of blockchain technology to implement it? I believe that there is a great scope for improving usability of this technology.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the question. So, I'm not the expert on blockchain. Of course, there's a lot of applicability to it, Tushar. So it's a great question. I do believe there's applicability and innovation in blockchain that we need to do. Sovereign identity is an important one. Sovereign clouds are important as well. Like if you think of what organizations and especially governments are going to, they want to protect the data of their public. And that matters for sovereign identity. But I don't, I wish I could give you a smart answer on how blockchain is used. Maybe we can follow up on that.
Okay. Sure.
And then I see there's a second question.
Next question,
on
second question. Yeah. Could you please
so
share
on
the challenges? Yeah.
Yeah, so
Go
just
ahead,
to
Vasu.
read the question, could you please share the challenges with using biometric as primary authentication? That I've heard that although biometrics are secure, there's a way to reset them. I think like everything, right? Biometrics as well, you can tamper with it. But biometrics are harder to tamper with than passwords. Passwords are easier because you can sell these passwords and credentials. So I would say biometrics are like, I use facial recognition for my Surface laptop, right? So I come in the morning, it's Windows Hello. It's a great experience. Like I don't have to log in, but I couple that with a PIN. So that's why like what we call defense in depth is important, that you have to make sure that whether you're using biometrics or password lists or any of that, right, or passwords, have multiple layers so you are protecting against yourself. But there is a lot of innovation on the biometric front, and I think it's very cool because one of the things, remember that design needs to improve. People feel like security gets in the way of their work and then they don't use security, which is terrible. So if we make the security experience easier and more beautiful and elegant and modern, then maybe they'll adopt security. And I think biometrics plays a role there.
Thank-
And Vijay, the one thing I should have talked about, we didn't talk about DevOps a lot and in
DevOps,
terms of
yeah.
innovation. So I should have mentioned it. But DevOps is also another, like especially Sec DevOps and how do you build security right into the tool chain and into the line of code. It's a thriving place. So think about that, because ideally you want security from the first line of code. Same thing with firmware security and silicon security. Like, how do you innovate with that? So I apologize, I should have touched on those two areas, but those are also great places to, if you're a startup looking for what's happening, how are things moving, hot places.
And there are a couple of more questions, I think, from Tarang.
We can take them later.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we have already almost 50 minutes.
Vasu secretary told me very strongly, 50 minutes, no more. But we haven't beyond that.
I think.
Thank you so much. And thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
been such a pleasure with you all and such a treat.
Can I just conclude?
Yes, of course,
Yeah.
please,
I would,
Anand.
I was listening to the whole conversation, what a good teacher, good professor can ask, and what a good, brilliant student can answer. It was a conversation like that. So very, very nice. Everybody is really thrilled. Can I request Professor Ahuja to say a word of thanks? Professor?
Yeah. Thank you, Anand, for this opportunity. And I must compliment Vasu. It was really an inspiring talk. And taking us, I was away from all of this, and now I'm so much engrossed. And I want to know more about it. And the more I want to know about it, there's also some kind of fear settling in as to how unsecure we are. So thank you, Vasu. And I would like to request you, maybe sometime in the coming, near future, if you could address and speak to our students. They'll be very happy to hear you. Yeah.
Oh, that would be an honor. Of course, I owe a lot to COEP, so it would be my pleasure. Thank you so much for the kind invite, Dr.
We must thank you.
Of course. And I just want to leave you with a few words. I'm so sorry if I instilled fear. I always feel terrible that whenever I go and talk, it just terrifies everyone. So I try to make it like light. But we need to change the dialogue on security.
Yes.
There's a lot of shaming in this industry. There's a lot of people focus on the victim and why have you not secured yourself? I think we need to change the dialogue to the attackers. What the heck? Every industry, if someone comes and robs your house, right, you go and focus on catching the robber, not evicting the person in the house. So we need to change the dialogue of security. We need to make it's every single person's responsibility. There was a great question on, as a CMO, what would you want? I'll leave it just not as a CMO, but two big things. Like, I'm a big believer in find your own purpose. Find what makes you passionate and what makes your heart sing. And I hope it is security, which makes your heart sing, because it impacts all of us. And then the second one I would say is we all need to inspire, and we all need to be inspired. This is an amazing, beautiful place to be in. It is game changing. It's at the edge of innovation. So we need to treat it with that respect and with that importance. And if we all change one heart at a time, if we all are inspired, and if we inspire each other, then magic will happen. So I hope that I hope you all got a little bit of value from what I was saying. And thank you again, Anand, Vijay, and Dr. Ahuja for the opportunity. It's great to be here with you all. And thank you for the questions. Bye.
Thank you, Vasu.
Right.
Thank you. We really
Thanks a
appreciate
lot.
your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm ending the meeting.
Sure.